hello, good evening, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hi, welcome to the Serene View. My name is Serene, and I'm your host for the Serene View. We are talking about constructive arguments. Now, if you're wondering, how can arguments be constructive? Very simple. I find that nowadays online is more about, just basically being echo chambers of us, hearing more opinions of ourselves and being polarized. So constructive argument really is bringing all the different issues, all the different aspects of the issues coming in. Now, I have with me Eugen, who is a very, very interesting person who is trying to convince me that we should not have complex solutions to complex problems today. So his argument is stop trying to solve complex problems with complex solutions. And I find that to be very interesting. And I, of course, completely disagree. But I will leave it to Eugen to introduce himself first. Eugen, all yours.
Yeah, my name is Eugen Oetringer. As mentioned, I have an education in mathematics. And, well, one of the first things I learned when I started to work was mathematics is great under circumstances, but when things cannot be clearly defined or the data is too tricky to create, then one should stop using mathematics and switch to patterns. And that turned out to be highly effective with complex solution, and it was welcome in my environment until the year 2005. And then the best practices took over, everything had to be defined and so forth. I refused adapting myself to this and continued to use what I had experienced to work really well with complex matters. And those turned out to be really effective, especially where things had failed before and the needed results just didn't show up. So more on that in a moment. Okay. So back to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you. So I guess maybe we should start off with a little bit of definitions, right? Like when we talk about complexity, when we talk about complex issues, complex problems, what really are we talking about?
Well, good question. Usually we start with definitions, but yes. I don't do that. I don't do that for a simple reason. When we try to agree on a definition like this one, it takes 3 months or so, costs 30,000 euros. And it ends up in a drawer, and we haven't even covered the matter of how to communicate it to the people we want to get on board. So instead, I use coaching practices, and I intend to go in such a coaching practice. So with using patterns instead of this definition, the huge advantage is we don't have to agree on a definition. Everybody can have a somewhat different perspective as long as we understand each other. We can make decisions. We can start working on the results instead of endless discussions.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, we have quite a few people on, so I'm going to greet them. So Heiner says, "Where's the Zoom link?" Heiner, we're not on Zoom, but so you are it. This is it, Heiner. Say hello to us. We are live. Yes, as Jinpo says, it is a live broadcast. Sundaresh says, hello. And we also have Mahendra, which says greetings to all participants. Now, the first thing we want to ask you is, do you agree? Do you agree that we should not even have a definition? We shouldn't even start. What do you think? What is your definition of complex issues? Or do you agree, Eugen, that no definitions, let's just jump straight into it? So if you're online with us, drop it into your, oh, hi, Rohit. Hi. So if you're online with us, drop it into the comments. Tell us, do you think that we should quit definitions and start doing stuff? Hello. Yes. Hello to everyone. Yes. Okay. So Eugen, do you want me to bring up your PowerPoint, or do you want me to?
I don't see any.
Let them have it.
So, yeah, no, let's go into that. Yeah. So yeah, what you see here, well, it's a subject, and there are a range of big problems that need to be solved. It doesn't matter whether it's climate change, bureaucracy, project failure rates, burnouts, mental matters, hate, and so forth. They're all complex challenges, depending on or with complex dependencies. And when we look at how things are approached today, it's let's apply a method, let's apply an IT solution, let's follow the latest trend, or let's follow science. Well, that has been going on for about 2 decades, and the effective solutions remain to be found. So with my previous introduction, I would like to move to a somewhat different perspective, somewhat that is less oriented from what the experts provide, but from listening to those who suffer and to those who have found effective solutions. Now, for this, and I think you can bring the picture back now. So let's put these problems, and there are more to those, back into perspective. Sareen, if you could share my screen again.
Sure.
There we are. So I've moved the problem areas to the right. There's a complication of Corona. And on the other hand, we have initiatives like the Paris Climate Agreement and Fridays for Future. We have the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. But we have also business matters that need attention today. Businesses, in order to remain competitive, need to make agile yet reliable decisions. But when we now look into the agile practices, frameworks, and the force, well, they are designed for software development. With them now being brought to the enterprise level, gaps need to be closed and conflicts need to be resolved. So huge opportunity to use this as a door opener. And there's the other one of complex problem-solving skills expected through a report of the World Economic Forum. They're expected to be one of the top 10 skills in demand within the next years. Now, and there's another group. That's a group who has found innovative solutions of highest impact. And we look from their perspective, first of all, this little cloud between the left side and the right. This cloud is representing the practices, the thinking, the laws, the regulation, the IT tools that all have put obstacles to bringing solutions from the left side to the problems at the right side. Now, when we look from the innovation perspective and from innovation networks into that matter, what we see is that innovative solutions of high and highest impact are available for almost all the big areas at the right side. Moreover, the same is the case for solutions for this cloud itself. Now the question is, what can we do about it? So let's go on to the, oh, by the way, yeah, with that we have found, or we have identified a most damaging root cause, but at this level, it is not changeable. Let's see what we can do about this. Now, when we start listening to those suffering, then we get different perspectives, particularly when we listen beyond the surface and not to the hundreds and thousands of issues, but to the lowest effort yet highest impact solution needs. And then there are the truly open innovators. There are people who have found solutions demonstrating in the field where other solution attempts have failed. Usually that's individuals out of the box cross-disciplinary thinkers. Their communication skills are quite often poor, or they have mental matters worsening that matter, and they have no interest group representing them. And in between those, there's a rather interesting group, and that is those in charge. And what we experienced, that was confirmed by a professor here from university close by, is that many know that things need to be done differently, but do not know how. So huge opportunity to position solutions in that perspective. Now, then there's another area where, well, listening isn't taking place to the level it should be. That's the area of laws of nature and phenomena. What are laws of nature? Well, laws of nature cannot be changed. If they occur, we should adapt to it. Now, here we have examples: Einstein's famous formula, Newton's gravity, and Darwin's survival of the fittest. But there are more simple examples as well, like phase shifts, as they're called in physics, or tipping points, and capacity bottlenecks. Now, when we look into tipping points, there's a freezing point. It provides a tipping point. Then there are the phenomena. That's observable facts or event. It can be exponential growth. We've heard about that with Corona. Again, tipping points and capacity bottlenecks. Now, here we have an issue. Is something a law of nature, or is it a phenomena? Well, we normally, or with today's thinking, we would define it. With what I'm proposing, we don't care. All that matters that we take the appropriate actions when they occur. Now, and by the way, with water, there's not just one tipping point, but there are more tipping points. Water can also be in the air in the form of cloud, but although invisible. So the same needs to be reflected in our organizations as well. Now, here's another example of a law of nature being applied and phenomena. With Corona, surely most, if not all, have seen this drawing with the exponential growth phenomenon, with the flatten the curve practice, which is a practice or a set of practices of the capacity bottleneck. And behind that is a law of nature. We'll identify that in a moment. And in the background, there was also this tipping point phenomenon. The tipping point, for example, when the capacity of intensive care units would be exceeded. Now, what happened here when this law was applied? All of a sudden, we saw amazing things we thought, well, wouldn't be possible these days anymore because of bureaucracy and complexity. But all of a sudden, agile yet reliable decision-making at the highest level happened through applying flatten the curve and providing reliable predictions. New laws passed parliaments within days, and lost trust was being restored in no time in countries like Germany and the Netherlands, where I live. Now, and with that, well, instead of providing theories or definitions, let's go into a little exercise and get to the bottom of what drives capacity, what drives complexity, and how we can intervene and really reduce complexity, and do this with rather simple techniques that are available today. So Serene was a kind already opening the exercise. It's online. Serene, if you could provide the link to the online web page so everybody can go through the exercise. And this is a PDF. If you
Yes.
want
To the other one, is it? You want? Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
This
the
is
other one is interactive.
Yes. I will put both of it into the comments. So those of you who are on LinkedIn can just click it rather than having to look and copy from the things. Just give me one moment. I'll just put it all into the comments and you can just click it in the comments. Yep. And for those of you who are not on LinkedIn, I will put it up into the comments everywhere. Okay. So someone has feedback that they can barely read can barely read the screen projection. Yes. So yes, I apologize. I think the streaming might be a little bit slow. So as a result, it's a little bit blurred, and so that's one of the things that has happened. So if you can just click on the link inside your comments, that will bring you straight to an interactive web page. So raise your hands. Raise your hands if you have already, if you're already there. If not, we are going to get started. Let me just show. This is what it looks like. Yes.
Yeah. Ideally, you'll use the online web page because it's interactive. You can click on it. There's a certain screen size required. If there is an error message, you can use the PDF link, which Serena has made available as well. So what I would like you to do is to answer this question: which practices have become preferred practices during the previous decade? You can choose either from the left or the right, but not from both sides. There are 7 such rows I'd like you to respond to. Don't take more than 5 minutes for the first round and 3 minutes for the second round. There's nothing you can do wrong. We are not going to blame anybody. The first round is with the perspective of a large organization, or a system like health services. Which practices have this large organization have become preferred practices during the previous decade, within the last decade? And when done, please put your answer in the chat. How many times have you selected the left side? How many times the right side? And for this, I would say, let's start going and give it 5 minutes from now.
Okay. In the meantime, we will highlight some of the comments that have come up. I think people have been thinking about definitions. Okay, so there's definitions of complexity. Okay, so I think if we started with Qianwei says that we need to define it. Defining it will give us clarity, but it can be evolved. On the other hand, Jean-Paul. Okay, I think it should be pronounced as Jean-Paul, but if I'm mispronouncing your name in a horrible way, I publicly apologize. So I think Jean-Paul says, he likes the fact that, you are shying away from definitions and going straight into the argument. And Mahendra says we need a definition of complex problems. Otherwise, we'll be searching for solutions that are, impractical to implement because we haven't actually truly understood the complex problem. And so then back to Qianwei, who tells us that, well, it's abstract in nature. Any situation can become complex, and a complex situation can be inherited. A non-complex situation can be made complex by raising the outcomes we want to achieve. And then she said she missed the first part, but no, we're still on the first part. So we haven't even started on the definitions yet. Yes. And Jean-Paul says that she believes that we should look at the context, because the context actually determines the complexity or the simplicity, and therefore we should open our dialogues using examples, which I think Mahindra has added to that. So looking at, for example, a living thing, a living plant, and how they communicate with each other, and this whole research about how the leaves, the stems, and so on communicate with each other, and again, artificial intelligence. Okay, so so again from Mahindra, the many of yesterday's planetary complexities are no longer complex. Okay, so okay. I'm doing great with this name. Yes. Oh, yes, vindication. Okay, so answers coming in. Qianwei says 5-2. And I'm so sorry, LinkedIn user, but I really don't know who you are. I'm not able to see your name. I really appreciate it if you could put your name down. Because LinkedIn user, you are the exact opposite of Qianwei. So he was 5/2 and you are 2/5. Okay. And then Jean-Paul hasn't given us his answer yet. Now there's Mahindra, Rohit. Who else is on the call with us? Heiner. So Sundarasan. Okay, so again, apologies all around if I'm mispronouncing your name, but just drop all of the comments. Drop in the comments. How many on the left? How many on the right are you getting? How many on the right and left are you getting? So all these. Jean-Paul is 1/6.
For a large organization, Jean-Paul, this is the
Wow,
first one. I know
wow.
he is heavily on the right side, but that I would have expected with the second round.
Wow. All right. Okay.
Any others?
Yes. Anyone else? Last chance. Last call. Anyone else who is online and hasn't given us their answer yet? Anyone else? Right. So then we'll review the correct answer so that you can all feel vindicated. Yes. No, wait, hang on. We'll just give a free more. Yes. A count of 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Go ahead, Eugen. Yes.
Now let's do it the other way around. Let's do it once again from the second perspective. If you could answer the question, which practices have become preferred practices during the previous decade for a small team or team you work in or for yourself?
Yes. Okay. So if you can't read it, it says for perspective do it again, but do it again for yourself or for a team, a small team that you work for. Okay. Do it again, but for yourself or a small team that you work for. Right. So another LinkedIn user has come in with 2-5 again. Yes, LinkedIn users are 2-5 today. This is a different LinkedIn user, I think. And Jean-Paul has said, well, that is his context of sustainocracy with many different small and large partners. I've never heard of sustainocracy. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, Eugen, but Jean-Paul, we would like you to find it. Oh, you have?
Yes, I work together with Jean-Paul. I know him.
Oh, I see. Okay, so well, I feel ignorant now. Oh, come on, tell us what is sustainocracy?
Sustainocracy, yeah, it's all about co-creation and putting core values at the center of decision making. It's core values like health, safety, healthy healthy food, and that kind of thing. And in the context of sustainocracy, yes, I know it's the practices of the right side that are applied in that context. But without that, Jean-Paul, the organizations that we want to get on board may or need to go still through process to get them let go of the practices of the left side and join those of the right side.
I see. Okay. Well, LinkedIn. So, LinkedIn users, please write your name in. I can't see your name. Yes. I feel plagued by LinkedIn users that I can't see. So please write in your name, LinkedIn users. And I'll explain to you why we can't see your name. It's because of the permissions that you have put on your LinkedIn, which doesn't allow LinkedIn to share your name out. Okay. Right. Yeah, so Mahindra is defining it for you, sustainable democracy. Wow. That's my word of the day. I have just learned a new word. My word of the day. Okay, let's see who is. Okay. So Catherine is. I see. Hi, Catherine. Okay, so Catherine is the one who is having 3/4. I shall put. There you go, Catherine. 3/4. That's the round two. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if you have not finished round two, or if you have finished and not sharing with us, please share with us round two. Okay, thank you, Catherine. Thank you. So please share with us what is your answers for round two. And if you're wondering what are we doing, we are doing this. Okay, we are doing from perspective two, complete the exercise again, but this time with the perspective of yourself or of a team, of a small team.
Ah,
Yes. And if you do not have the link, if you've just joined us, I am putting the link in to all of the channels again.
okay.
Okay. Yes. So Jean-Paul, this is when he worked as a CEO in a large company, he also applied dynamic clustering to get complexity into a flow.
Okay. Well, yeah, with him, I expect that to be the case. And there are more organizations who apply the practices of the right side, of the right column. How far are we? So it's more than 3 minutes. No.
Okay.
So
All right. So let's just move on.
Well, yeah, normal reactions over here in Europe, also the US, that I have got in workshops and one-on-one discussions was that that large organizations overwhelmingly apply the practices of the left side. They're coming with best practices and methods like project management, service management, governance, and the like. And today, a new trend is that of agile or self-organization. And there we see more of the practices at the right column. And when we now look a little bit further, then what happens, large organizations, at least in the Western countries, here exceptions granted, large organizations have the practices of the right embedded into their policies, processes, IT tools, and so forth. And when then Agile comes, well, you may see the conflict as pretty much opposite practices are needed. Now, the question is, how can this be resolved? How do people know when the practices of the left side and those of the right side are the better ones? A good question from Zareen. So perhaps we wait for a few answers there.
Yes. Yes, I really would like to know. I mean, do you agree? I mean, do you agree with what we are saying? That large organizations tend to be on the left and smaller organizations or yourself, you tend to be on the right. Or no, this is a constructive argument, right? This is the time to disagree with everything that Eugen is saying. This is the time to disagree. I think Jean-Paul already has disagreed, right? He has 1/6. Yes. Okay, so we have Catherine, who has, I hope this is still Catherine, but anyway, she is agreed. It is because of compliance, governance, regulation, risk management. So for large organizations, it's very much on the left. Okay. So who else? Jean-Paul. Jean-Paul says, yes, he agrees. I was hoping that you would disagree. They tend to be very control-oriented. Oh, yeah, come on. Somebody has got to support me, and hierarchical, and hence very rigid, hands on the left. Okay. Yes. So anyone else? Come. Tell us. Talk to us. Do you think that organizations tend to be on the left? We are still talking about these working practices. Do you think that organizations which are large tend to be on the left? There. Let me show you what we're talking about. Still this. And small organizations on the right. Oh. Last comments. Come on, people. Just pop in a no. I'm waiting for somebody to say a no. Yes. Okay. All right. Shall we move on?
Okay, then let's move on.
Nice.
Let's share the
Yes.
screen again.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so now instead of a definition, here is my picture of complexity. One of the picture. This is a simplification of the real world. And at some point we asked us, well, how can we understand how complexity is created? How can we understand where we can intervene? And that resulted into 3 elements. So when we look now from that perspective into that, or perhaps if somebody knows or has an idea what elements that could be that are at the foundation as to where we can intervene and reduce complexity, prevent projects that are far too complex to be executable. So let's see. Any ideas? What elements that could be?
So those of you who are looking at this picture now, I'm going to make it really big. So tell us what other elements, what are the 3 elements that you think are fueling bureaucracy and complexity? Put it in your answers. Put it in your answers. Tell us what are the 3 elements you believe are fueling bureaucracy and complexity in this.
Yeah, one is visible. I know it's tricky.
Yeah. Come.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to take a gander at it. I'm going to say it's companies because I can see a company really big up there. So I'm going to take a gander and say it's a company is one of them. And well, legislature, because I think over here we have tons of legislature. So I think that's something that is fueling certainly bureaucracy. I'm not sure about complexity, but definitely bureaucracy. Now, for the rest of you, I don't know the answer any more than you guys do. So put it in.
So let's
Catherine says culture, linear processes, and security. Other people? Anyone else? Mahendra, Jean Paul. Who else is with us? Qian Wei. What do you all think?
Let's move on then. Yeah, when we look into the practices being applied, the practices of the left column have been dominantly applied through the best practices over 2 decades, and not just for the situations where they work, but also for situations where the practices of the right column should have been used. And with each round, ever more bits and pieces, dependencies and associated change needs were added into the system. And surely here we have a most damaging root cause, and that is changeable. Now, in the traditional way, of course, we would define things, the number of bits and pieces, but here we do something different. We're creating a pattern, and we start by saying, let's add the number of bits and pieces, the number of dependencies, and the number of changes with the bits and pieces in our mind without using numbers, and call this complexity. And with that, we can create a certain pattern. We can plot the complexity, meaning it's the effort and cost involved over time. We can use the drawing we have seen from Corona with flatten the curve, but here we create a slightly different line. The first line is the level where organizations and or society are healthy, and there's a second line to this, the maximum affordable by organizations and society. Now, when we now look into into how complexity developed, how ever more bits and pieces, dependencies, and change needs were added to the system, this curve developed. The exponential growth has happened. It happened slowly, and what didn't happen was recognizing the exponential growth, recognizing level 1 tipping points. So instead of switching from the practices of the left column to the right column, the practices of the left column were continued to be used. And project owners and experts, they said the method has worked before, our proof of concept has worked, we must have done something wrong, let's restart the project and double our effort. But then on the other hand, workshop floor experts, that's experts by experience, said at the third attempt in my environment, I believe it when I see it. At the fifth attempt, it won't work either. And at the 10th attempt in the field of governance, I stopped counting. And I stopped counting around 2009. And meanwhile, I've seen this all over in many companies happening again with many, many initiatives. Somehow, the tipping points and the consequences weren't seen. This created virtual capacity bottlenecks leading to overly filled agendas and so forth. And now there's a serious estimate here for the Netherlands, and it simply says the unnecessary complexity and bureaucracy, and associated bureaucracy, I should say, costs throughout the Netherlands 19 billion per year. That's just the salaries, the unnecessary. So if you want to make a calculation for your country, at least this may apply for Western countries, then you can calculate the waste of money from the unnecessary complexity. And there's the other.
Sorry, I was going to say we've gotten a few complaints. So Mahendra says it's not readable, and this Jean-Paul says that the subtitles are disturbing the slide, and also to please explain the image, the large and small boxes, thick and thin linkage lines, and what's the relevance of these differences. Also, I will say this, I have it on full screen, and even I still can't read the last line. I can't, So is it possible for you to copy it out? I mean, put it into the comments, or something. And I think they just want to have a look at not just this slide, but the one before that as well. Let me know if that's not true, okay, people? Whether you want to see this slide and the next slide, and also for you to explain the image, the large box, the small box, the thin and thin linkage lines, and what's the relevance. And Catherine wants to know if they can get the slides.
Yeah, for the slides, if you put your emails in the comment line or send a message to Serene,
yes,
or myself, no problem sending you the slides. Yeah, that gets a little bit tricky right now. For me, it's easily readable.
Yes.
Surprisingly, in the video. So I'm just puzzled how we go about it. So the box is
okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Now it's large.
Yes, I've put it to the maximum, and I hope that it can be seen by that. But maybe just just a short pause for them to read it, and then after that we can explain. So they want to explain the small box. The small box is coronavirus, that's my understanding, and the large box is complexity. But I'll leave it to
we have discussed the small box, so we're now doing something similar with the large box. And within the large box, there are the gray boxes. The first one says exponential growth missed, where at the lower one of the gray boxes, exponential growth missed. So instead of taking corrective actions, people just continued applying the same thinking that drove exponential growth. And at some point, that's the middle box, the gray box in the middle, tipping points were crossed, meaning where people should have switched from the practices of the left column to the right column, they continued using the practices of the left column. And the upper gray box is about the virtual capacity bottlenecks that have developed from applying the wrong practices. Now, the red box, again, I'll read it out. unnecessary complexity and bureaucracy costs throughout the Netherlands 19 billion per year, or 5.2 billion euros per 1 million residents. So you can calculate that for other Western countries. So
can I ask you if I'm actually putting it into the banner now, and can you just tell me if this is the correct? So I have tried my best to copy it. Is this the correct one? Is this the one?
yeah.
Yes. Okay. Great. Great. Okay. So I'll put it into the comments,
Um,
people, so you can
it,
look it up. You will need to read Dutch, but that's all right. I'm sure all of you can. So we'll put it into the comments for you. Yes.
okay.
All right. Okay. So
Okay.
yes,
If you
please
can go back.
carry on.
So the other thing that happened, because the bureaucracy and the complexity increased, high impact innovations don't get through the system anymore. That's a second red box now. And that's basically the cloud I've shown in the beginning. Other things that happened is, as the maximum is exceeded, when there are ongoing cost savings projects, reorganizations, well, the collapsed dollars are then offloaded to the weakest in the system, which is the third red box. Now, what happened here is we have lost the ability of recognizing laws of nature and phenomena and applying the practices they provide. Again, a most damaging root cause, and this one is changeable. Corona has shown us how to get it changed, a matter of applying flatten the curve. But there's a little bit more to this. But basically, what we can do is, using the practices flatten the curve provides. On the road, we see the practices of building bridges, virtual bridges between organizations, locations, methods, and so forth can be built. They just need to be complete. Then we have natural process flows based on the roundabout model, where in various European countries, rigid traffic lights have been removed and replaced by roundabouts, which led to higher throughputs, fewer accidents, and lower costs. And exactly the same, we actually have made it happen in a very large organization with one bigger roundabout where people were able to find information they needed to do their job. And the other one is something everybody driving a car uses these days, which is the practice of providing an alternative route when there is a traffic jam or overly filled agendas, whatever, to get to the destination. Now, the law of nature that applies here, that is, when the demand for a resource exceeds its capacity, a tipping point is crossed, queues build up. We see it on the road, but we see it everywhere. And let's put that into perspective. What's the difference between on the road with Corona and other areas? Now, here's the road system of the Netherlands. I live south of Rotterdam. When I drive to Amsterdam, maybe it's worthwhile if you enlarge this one again. Thanks very much. Then there's the traffic jams, and at the front of the traffic jam there's a bottleneck. Now, on the road, the practices, well, we know all of, are applied. But then when we look in organizations, we see very similar structures. Here, the cities are called central organizations, location one, product line A, workshop floor, whatever. And the traffic jams are called waiting lists, filled agendas, people locked into projects for 100%, but already allocated at the end of the project for the next project, without appreciating that the project may have trouble, it may be extended. These kind of things occur there. And there's another area, the brain. Again, the same structures between hearing, balance, vision, touch, and so forth. And also here, traffic jams occur. Actually, they have been reported. But what wasn't possible to find was research that had applied flatten the curve. And when I spotted that, and I had applied flatten the curve with data center computers and organizational matters, uh, it turned out there are many practices around that apply flatten the curve, but the experts were not aware. When we tried to get research going, the responses were interesting. Sorry, it doesn't fit my discipline, my procedures, and so forth. So in other words, we have now a situation here where the missing link between reported causes and symptoms of mental matters like dyslexia, autism, and so forth is most likely the capacity bottleneck phenomenon. Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that. So you're actually basically saying that a lot of the, I guess, disabilities that we see out there are bottlenecks. And if we flatten the curve, as in we stop bottlenecking, our brains, we'll do a lot better. Or we'll be able to magically cure things like autism.
Absolutely. Well, autism is a little bit more tricky, but with dyslexia, definitely lots of examples available where that happened. My son had both dyslexia, difficulty to learn reading, and daily emotional outbursts, ADHD. Well, when the bottlenecks were removed, when the likely bottlenecks, I must be careful expressing it, when those were likely to be removed, he was able to learn reading within 6 weeks after years of extensive training. And
what are these bottlenecks? I mean, what are we talking about when we say bottleneck?
Well, information traffic needs to connect between different, it needs to flow through different areas, through paths to different areas of the brain. From the left side to the right side of the arm. The seeing goes in here, and hearing is at the other side. Long distance connections need to be available for this to work. And one of the things applied was switching the dominant eye to the other side to change long distance connections to short distance connections. Now, the other advantage was daily ADHD outbursts daily have disappeared for 14 years now. And he's no exceptions. Many others have made similar experiences. We have established that through a charity we started. Many others have experienced similar results after the official treatment had delivered insufficient results. And why is this relevant to the matter of complexity? Because the brain is seen as the most complex object around. So here we have something that needs to be addressed. With Corona, we have seen flatten the curve being applied. In brain research, bottlenecks have been reported, but trying to get the curve research started just didn't fit the procedures.
But let me push that. Let me push that thinking further, right? So it's not just this. I mean, obviously there are people who greatly suffer from dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, and so on. But I will say probably far more people are, suffering from unduly high amounts of stress, burnout, and perhaps anxiety and other forms of mental ill health. So what do you think? Do you think that these are all ways of overwhelm? Because obviously stress and burnout sounds to me exactly like they are, cases of overwhelm, cases of, traffic jam.
Exactly, in organizations. So that's the picture in the middle we just saw. So if you take
and you put it back,
the stress away that occurs when bottlenecks, when people need to work 12, 16 hours a day, when they are enormously stressed to deliver results, well, surely that's bound to create enormous stress, which causes health problems and burnouts at the end of the day. But if you remove this 90 billion of unnecessary complexity and bureaucracy that I've mentioned before, well, surely burnouts, stress, related health issues will reduce a lot.
Well, I must say this, which is that Jean-Paul has agreed with you. I'm trying to be small, you can be big, so that Jean-Paul's comment don't block us. Let's see. Okay, now we look a little better. Yes. So Jean-Paul says he agrees with you, right? Business, government generally do not apply feedback systems that indicate a forthcoming, tipping point, and either they neglect them out of their own interest, or they react, when it's too late, and they react in their own dramas, especially politics. And therefore, we need to take our own feedback system seriously because, well, in business and in politics, the laws of nature are hardly ever applied. Uh, I I don't know enough about politics to make sweeping comments on it, but I will say this: that I've been involved in many businesses and consulted much more, and invariably they are all looking for growth, and which I always thought was kind of funny because the only thing in nature that grows non-stop, like never stops growing, is basically cancer. That's it, right? Everything else grows and stops after a while.
Yeah.
But in business, our aim everywhere with most of the businesses I deal with is to grow and grow and grow and grow.
Mm. Yeah. Uh, there are limits to growth. Actually, I've experienced firsthand through my previous employer, prospering IT service this company. It was really prospering as long as these laws of nature were applied. Yeah, it grew to 100,000 people in 2-3 decades. And then the best practices came, and this culture got lost. Laws of nature, which were part of making common business sense decisions, just were overruled by compliance with the methods, with more theoretical methods and processes, linear processes, unable to match or unable to be kept up to date with the changing environment. The environment changed quicker than the linear processes could be updated, the regulations, and so forth. And so, yeah, they still grew, but eventually they get to the top point of what was possible to be competitive. Yearly reorganizations, cost savings projects had to be executed. At some time, they're taken over. Further, people, even more people were laid off, productive people especially, and disappeared from the surface of the earth, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So.
I hear you because I just had this discussion, and they were talking about if your body was run like a large organization, we will probably never survive, right?
Yeah.
Because we all think the brain makes the decisions, but actually no, if I touch something hot, my hand moves back before anything else has happened. I'm not even registered that I've touched something hot, but your hand has moved back. So the body makes local decisions when it's necessary. Now, Mahendra
Okay.
has chipped in with something, says climate change, extinction of species, air pollution, water pollution, etc., are all human. Oh, sorry, no. Climate, and then after that, human. Divisiveness, health issues, conflict, materialism, greed, power, jealousy, inequalities. These are all complex problems. And the simple question is, what is the root cause of all these complex problems?
Well, it's definitely not 100 root causes, but it's in my experience more than one. One needs to look into the specific, into at the system level, into areas where things become solvable, and usually very few root causes and changeable root causes behind them can be identified. Combine this with laws of nature and phenomena, and this usually shows the way to effective solutions. Like, this was basically what enabled me to find the existing treatment for my son. Yeah, to find effective solutions in or natural process flows, for example, instead of linear process flows. Natural process flows, so people don't have to bother about finding their way in the process, but are guided through it. So, yeah.
So Jean-Paul was going to say he had a simple answer, which is mindset. And I'm going to add to that, Jean-Paul. I think that's the most complex answer ever, right? Because it's one word, but that's probably the most difficult thing to change. It's probably the most different in terms of every single human being and so on and so forth, right? So that's probably the most complex problem ever. Catherine has said, how do you take into account flywheels and network effects?
Yeah, flywheel effects, they're referenced very often if you get 12% of the people on board, or in other studies, a little bit over 20. Well, that are figures from the past. The world has changed. The world has crossed this first tipping point. Organizations have crossed it, and what worked before is much, much harder to make it work in today's environment. Actually, many organizations and societies are, in my experience, even beyond a second tipping point, where it becomes even harder, because if there are cost savings pressures everywhere, you can start an initiative, but somebody else can take away or prevent you to execute the project you want or need to execute. Just sometimes one person saying no is sufficient to stop a project. So flywheels, they used to work in the past, but the numbers provided there need to reflect the law of nature we've just discussed. Then one can build projects or initiatives around it. But let's please stop applying what worked in the past and assume it works today. We need to integrate laws of nature, phenomena, and that is a different story. Then they surely can be made to work again.
Well, Mahindra has come back with his own simple root cause, which is human activities and unsustainable lifestyle. I agree with you, Mahindra. If we killed all the humans tomorrow, the earth will recover immediately. I totally agree. I am with you, right? And he says, adopt holistic well-being, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and live sustainable lifestyle. So that is his. So I'm Thanos, right? I'm like, kill all the humans.
Yeah, so he has now provided a root cause that is not changeable at first, and then has gone beyond it to identify what is changeable. So that is a very important step to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And finally, from Catherine, good work for your son. Yes.
Okay.
All right. So shall we go on with your presentation?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Just coming to the end very quick. If you enlarge this. So,
yes, I will.
Let me go back a little bit. So when we look into what is the difference between the one in green and Corona and many other examples, well, there, mathematics and computer-based simulations can be made. When that is possible, it is applied in physics, in mathematics, in architecture, in engineering. You see it all over. There's common sense. But as soon as things become too complex, or when cultures, laws, dependencies, and those would need to be simulated, that is a thing impossible to do. And I also don't see it happening with artificial intelligence. We need different practices. And, well, we need more of the practices and the right, and we need to enable a common business sense again, which used to be a valid, let's say, method. And how can we make that happen again? Well, therefore, we need Darwin-type flatten the curve research. He wasn't able to use mathematics. He used qualitative research and brought this rule of surviving of the fittest forward. So these kind of rules are needed rather than mathematical formulas there. And then also a few more simple laws and rules, so we can navigate through complex systems to the high impact solutions and make common sense and intuition possible again. And surely here we have, here we have, well, a changeable root cause, no question about that. Then what's the solution here for? The solution has been published in a book called Management 3.0. It's mentioned here as an addition for going about, as an addition to models, popular models for going about complex matters from Stacy, from Snowden, and so forth. What he has added was one particular word that was predictable. At the time, he presented it, but somehow the message didn't get across. The 19 billion I mentioned before that I wasted wasn't available at the time. So this wasn't really picked up. But what we can do now is make a policy from this. Oh yeah. Before I go on, please do not tell this word. In order to get through the learning effects or make things resonate in more detail, it really needs an exercise like this one and going through the discussion we just have gone through. Anything else, it has been done, it has been presented, it didn't deliver the necessary words. So what we can do now is to create a top-level policy from this, like use exact and linear practices when the situations are predictable, and use nonlinear practices when situations are difficult to predict, or a combination of both. When that is made a top-level possibility, we can use the bureaucracy and auditors to get it to the workshop floor. So, and yeah, and here we see back to the drawings, the Corona approach. Well, that's for the left side of the column, and here for the right side of the column, flatten the curve looks a little bit different because the exponential growth has happened. Here it's pattern-based. And, well, with that, I think we're over time, are we? Yes. So let's conclude.
Well, I will tell you this, that I never stop my guests if they are sharing something interesting and there are people online willing to argue with them. But Jean-Paul has a question for you. He says, is the mindset change described by Mahindra complying to your statement? So just to refresh your memory, this is the mindset change he's talking about. Adopt holistic well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and live sustainable lifestyle, because the root cause of our issues is human activities and unsustainable lifestyle. Okay, so
yeah, indeed, we need to go a little bit further. So what I've tried to get across now is to open the mind for different thinking. To open the mind, in this case, to apply a law of nature. And that is one of more practices available to address the mindset change. Jean-Paul has brought in two others I find very attractive. One is co-creation, working together. So with actual response, verbal response, rather than just through the chats here, that would surely help to open people's mind. And also the other thing sustainocracy brings in that is the focus on core human values for making decisions, for working together. Though that are all matters changing the mindset, and with one of the core values being health, well, that matches nicely with what Mahendra just has brought in.
okay, so would you like to just repeat what you said? What were the 4 practices? I heard changing the mindset, core human values, and co-creation. Were those I only heard 3.
Yeah, don't forget the laws of nature.
Okay, all right. So that was the one I missed. Okay.
Laws of nature, phenomena, training actually, which doesn't take place for complex matters, complex organizational and society matters. What else was there? Yeah, and focus on highest impact. You cannot afford to start initiatives or to only continue with initiatives that do something in a small environment and miss the big ones. Yeah. So focus on where the highest impact can be made.
So,
And in parallel, that should come together with bottom-up initiatives rather than them being progressed out of sync.
I was just gonna throw up a couple more comments. I think Catherine has agreed with you and says it makes sense. Jean-Paul has another question, which is, does it apply to government and business?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, which government is going to adopt this, huh? I mean, I know some businesses who do. I mean, I've heard of Hire and people like that, Morning Star and so on. But government, really?
Well, actually, they have applied the law of nature with Corona without realizing it. Yeah, yeah, they've done it. So we have an opening, and when we now look into agile practices that everybody's asking for, whether there's a gap when it is brought up to the cross-organizational level or the enterprise level, here's where we can bring it in. And then we have the World Economic Forum I mentioned at the beginning, where they say complex problem solving, that's one of the top skills in the years to come. Yeah. So there are openings that we should and can use to get this into government and businesses. And then we have future Fridays for Future movement with Greta Thunberg or so in certain countries. They are very active and can put a lot of pressure upon governments and businesses to change.
The reason why I was making a funny face is because I kind of think, Eugen, I hate to tell you this, but we needed Corona, which is like the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu, for them to even start applying the laws of nature. I'm like, look, I don't want to be dealing with Corona every year for them to, move this change.
Well, the law of nature, they've learned to apply the law of nature. Yeah, they've learned at the highest level. They've learned to apply the law of nature. Now they should explain with other complex matters, why don't you apply flatten the curve? It's now getting a lot harder to not answer this question. And we can also ask, well, when decisions are made at all levels, well, that's a decision on that kind of guiding questions that should be hard to answer negatively. So we can ask questions like, well, when you make a decision now, does it improve or worsen core human values? Yeah. Does a law of nature apply? Do you apply its practices, like flatten the curve? If not, it gets hard for them to be re-elected, I would say. We keep asking these kind of guiding questions.
Well, Mahindra says that, yes, we should simplify complexity and find the simple, practical methods. And that is how nature coexists in harmony. We need to look mindfully into nature.
It's part of the solution. Yeah.
Yes, and he says, oh, thank you very much to you for attending. And we need more of such brainstorming. I think we need more of kind of going out there and getting them to do something about it and not just brainstorming. That's what I think anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, anyone else? Last questions, people. Throw in your questions, throw in your disagreements, throw it in. Tell us if you want to see more of the slides. I think there's still one more slide. Is that it? Still one more slide?
Yeah, there's one more slide if you want to go through.
Yes.
And that's, well, if you apply this law of nature, flatten the curve, or whatever solution it is, it's still, people will still search for boxes where they can start. So there are various boxes in various areas, and there are boxes that don't fit any area. And all of those have complex dependencies. Now, what's bound to happen is this. Let's apply flatten the curve. Let's do it in a small environment first. And the next reaction is bound to be, we have done it. We called it simplification. What's new? And some will definitely answer, indeed, it worked. But there are others who are going to say, it did not work for us. The impact on important dependencies has no attention. Various groups had to start corrective actions. the net effect was yet more complexity and bureaucracy. So when we accept this, the argument becomes, in the box, flatten the curve works when the external damage is prevented or accepted by those impacted. There's a complication. External groups can keep requiring the wrong practices, which can trigger opposition, even if done in the box, even if it would work. Now, here's a proposal. The route of highest impact at lowest possible effort, costs, and risks, in my experience, would be this: start with a small implementation team, top down for the whole enterprise, and use things like the bureaucracy for the policy. And then coach the company internal coaching. And that's get those coaches into decision-making positions, or take them or educate people in decision-making positions to do the positions. That's not just at the highest level, but at all levels where decisions are made. And the final observed phenomenon: when a challenge looks complex, the effective solution may be simple. It may, however, need to be an integral solution of multiple elements from different fields. And that's it.
Well, we have a couple of other comments. So Mahindra says that humans broke the law of nature, and therefore through overconsumption, ecological destruction, even biological lab, and therefore the outcome was corona. I don't know about whether it was really a breaking of the laws of nature. I've always thought of corona as very much in line with the laws of nature, because in nature, a lot of the times, the weaker ones, the ill ones, the older ones are the ones who pass on. I mean, evolutionary forces tell us that, and the younger, stronger ones are the ones who survive. And if you look at corona, I know it's almost cruel to say it this way, and many of some of you may have friends and family who are affected, but I would think from a purely evolutionary point of view, I don't think corona bucks the laws of nature. I actually think corona complies with the law of nature. And I think you guys all know I'm Thanos. I'm thinking, yeah, if humans are gone, the earth will really benefit. Maybe the earth is thinking the same thing, right? Like, oh, okay, if we have less humans, maybe it would help. I don't know. Okay, but next is so Jean-Paul says, if we all agree on a new context, why not work on it together? Firstly, I'm not quite sure if I agree. But I have a philosophy of arguing for the sake of arguing. If not, I will not bother to do this constructive argument movement. But more importantly, I think we have kind of agreed that, not just us here, but a lot of people have agreed that we need to do something if we are to change the trajectory that the world is on right now. And so why not work on it together? That's a very good point. But my question will also be, what are we going to work on it together, and whether we can agree on the solutions? And finally, Mahindra says, yes, nature responded with human destruction with the pandemic, and more on the horizon if we don't change our ways. So any comments on that, Eugen?
The tipping points have been crossed. So the consumption of humankind for the whole year, you already heard correctly, over the tipping point for this year. Yeah. So the things must be done there, and there we have the tipping points in the climate area, which has consequences on food and so forth and so forth. So yes, we're running out of time. So we need to act, get our acts together. And in my experience, start next to the bottom-up tracks, top-down track, addressing things from where the highest impact can be made at the lowest effort, cost, and risk. And well, we've just seen a $19 billion possibility here for the Netherlands alone, to take away the crippling bureaucracy that prevents us from getting the innovative solutions through the system. And there are simple solutions to this. It just has to, But the basic solution would be to create a second innovation track where the value of an innovation is a leading criteria and not any of the methods or whatever.
Well, in response, I was going to say in response to Jean-Paul's question on why not work on it together, my question to all of you is going to be, okay, now you know all this, you have all the context, what are you going to be working on now, right? So we're going to all work on it together. I'm not sure if we can all liaise together. Maybe we can all get in touch with Eugen and then we'll support his project, whatever he's going to do. But more importantly, what are you going to be working on now? Knowing what you do, knowing that a simple solution is possible, what are you going to be working on? So drop it into the comments. Tell us what would you be working on now that you know this. Okay. So anything else you want to add to this, Eugen?
Yeah.
Any last comments? Anything else you want to say?
That makes a lot of sense to me. So that would be great if you can get something concrete out of it and can actually move forward with delivering something, showing how simple certain things can be, and hopefully get it to a level where others see it and join the boat, or how's it said, join the bus per Jim Collins. Jim Collins, it is, yeah.
So for those of you who want to get in touch with Eugen, this is his LinkedIn. I have also put it into the comments. You can get in touch with him. Yes, if you want to join him in doing something. I don't know whether you have projects that you want us to join on. But if not, for those of you who are looking at this, what do you want to join or what do you want to do yourself, right? What are the things that you want to work on right now? So if you have one last thing that you want to leave us with, Eugen, like, one thing you want us to remember from all of the, really small font size PowerPoint, what do you want us to remember from today?
How can we make the highest impact at the lowest possible effort, cost, and risk at the wider level? Okay. So if that would be used as a guideline, one could step one might be able to step, let's express it, one might be able to step out of the box and see that there are simple solutions to seemingly complex problems in many, many cases.
Okay, all right. So Catherine has wrote down that she's reflecting on today's input and applying the left and right approaches that we talked about. So that's what she's going to be working on. Very good. Anyone else? I mean, what the rest of you are going to work on? I'm going to work on arguing with the world as usual. Yes, because I think all of these, we're always talking about, how terrible it is how terrible it is that Facebook feeds us what we already believe in and therefore polarizes the world. Well, I would love to do something about it, to bring every issue to the table and look at all the different aspects of it. So that's what I want to do. Okay. Anything else for the rest of you? Yes, Mahindra, Jean-Paul, who else is here with us? What would you all want to do with today's information? Yes. Jean-Paul says he's going to keep on working on expanding sustainocracy together with Eugen, Mahindra, Heine, and others. The mindset exists, the way of working exists, and even the proof of concept, right? So, yes, thank you. Mahindra says his vision of the world and sustainable tourism. Down there's a YouTube channel. You can go and have a look at it. I'm not sure if Jean-Paul, you have a link to sustainocracy. I'm happy to show it up. If you have, just let us know if you have a link to sustainocracy. This is my word of the day that I have learned today, sustainocracy. Yes. It sure beats the lunacracy that we have here. So yes, definitely. Okay, so if you guys have a link, just come join us. And any last final comments? Yes. Okay, so I'm not sure if anyone else wanna talk about anything else. The last thing is, this is Eugen. Get in touch with him. Get in touch with me if you want the slides. We are happy to send it to you. And most of all, after you go out today, think really about if you could do something, you really could. What would you want to do? What would you want to do? Next week, I'm going to talk to a man who believes that play is the most important thing for children. Like they can don't go to school, they can don't learn anything, but if they don't play, that is going to be a big problem. So I think his views are controversial in themselves already. I don't even have to argue against him. So if you want to know why, I mean, if you want to come and talk about play and whether there's any importance of it to children, then come and join me next week, Thursday again. We'll be having a whole week of different articles on the topic, capped off with this. And then if you would like kind of connect with me tomorrow, there will be a summary post of every single comment that's been made this whole entire week about complexity. There'll be a summary post and I'll summarize everything that everyone said. And on Saturday, we have a Clubhouse. If you do not know what's Clubhouse, well, you're not old enough. Clubhouse is for oldies like me who still remember radio and want to go to radio. Okay, so there's the Sustainocracy blog, and this is Earth Odyssey's website. His play is important for us adults too. I think you are right, except that some of our play are not necessarily healthy for the earth. Whereas I think children's play tends to be a little bit more innocent. Yes. Okay, so any last comment, Eugen? Anything else you want to say? Words of wisdom.
Great discussions, and thanks very much for bringing this forward, Serene. And who knows, maybe we can get into some concrete projects from here.
Yes, I would love to see those projects. All right, so from me, Serene, and from Eugen, bye-bye, and we'll see you next week at the Serene View again. See ya,
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.